show.
Brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and nurturers. I'm going to do some reading today, and I lately have been doing that, but I have a reason. If I'm in an area or a subject matter where I have an opinion, that's one thing. But I want to show sometimes when I'm talking about the work that I've done that others have made statements, and I always document where those statements come from. So it's not only I, me, it's they, them also. So I'm going to start by reading an article, and they don't just come from one period of time, over a span of years. This is dated April of 2016. This paper is put out once a month, apparently, and it's put out by a group called Free Thought Today. And they work in the area of trying to keep the separation between church and state. This deals with an award that they gave me in 2015, and it's called the Emperor Has No Clothes Award. And that's because the little boy was the one who would say openly that the emperor has no clothes. Other people, because he was the emperor, they didn't want to offend him. They would act like, boy, he sure got some sharp duds on. But he actually had no clothes. And the little boy told him. So the headline for this story is Ernie Chambers, I Am What I Am. And this award, as I say, was given in 2015. Nebraska State Senator Ernie Chambers delivered a speech during, and they called themselves FERF, FFRF, Freedom from Religion. Their 30th annual convention on October 10th, 2015 at the Monona. Some of this print is very small in the introductory. It's a terrorist convention center in Madison, Wisconsin. He was introduced by co-president Annie Laurie Gaylor. Here she goes. I dare you to find anyone who embodies the spirit of the child in the Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale who tells it like it is better than Ernie Chambers. Senator Chambers is the longest serving state senator. Now this print is small, so I'm going to have to bring it a little closer. And if I stumble, it's not because I can't read well, it's because with these specs, I didn't see well. Anyway. Senator Ernie Chambers is the longest serving state senator in Nebraska, where he's known as a, quote, defender of the downtrodden, unquote, and a man of the people. As Rita Swan mentioned in her speech, Senator Ernie Chambers impressively ensured that Nebraska was the only state never to adopt a religious exemption for child neglect. What was happening was the Christian Science Monitor people, they call themselves Christian scientists, no medicine, no doctors, you just do it through faith or whatever they say they believe in. So when they would come before the legislature, I would always stop them. So then they brought their biggest gun. This guy, he was very impressive. He had on these professor-like glasses. And you know how people, when they want to impress you, they take off their glasses, they kind of call your attention to them. So he put them on. And I just asked him, are you of the opinion that people, when they have an ailment, they should not go to a doctor, but should take care of on faith alone, by faith alone? He said, yes. I said, well, am I mistaken, or are you wearing eyeglasses? And there was a silence, and the message got home. And a lot of these so-called Christian Science people who didn't want their children to be allowed to go to a doctor would slip and take medicine themselves. But it's easy to take a bitter pill and give it to somebody else to eat. But if you have to turn it around and swallow it yourself, it becomes a different story. I said I'm not going to digress too much, so let me hurry right along. Oh, and by the way, the Christian Science people they were successful in every state of saying that if a child is sick and you don't give medication and the child dies, you cannot be charged with child abuse or child neglect. And that was crazy. So I fended them off, and therefore Nebraska was the only state that did not allow that kind of exemption. I don't believe child abuse and neglect are justifiable under any circumstances. Before you give a child something to eat, you eat it yourself. Ernie previously won a First Amendment Hero Award from FERF in recognition of his career as a firebrand and, in particular, his challenge as a public official of paid legislative prayer. And then they give the citation to the U.S. Supreme Court. Marsh versus Chambers went before the U.S. Supreme Court in 1983, and it got it wrong, the court, because it said the legislature could have a chaplain. But they did say that the chaplain could not be paid. But Ernie had a moral triumph by persuading his unicameral branch to drop the payment for legislative chaplains anyway. No, the court said that they couldn't be paid. Then you may remember that a few years ago, Ernie sued God. This was a brilliant piece of writing and logic. Claims for relief included, quote, that the defendant has made and continues to make terroristic threats of grave harm to innumerable persons. Defendant directly and proximately has caused fearsome floods, egregious earthquakes, horrendous hurricanes, terrifying tornadoes, pestilential plagues, ferocious famines, devastating droughts, genocidal wars, birth defects, and the like, causing calamitous catastrophes resulting in widespread death, destruction, and terrorization of millions upon millions of the earth's inhabitants, including innocent babies, infants, children, the aged and infirm, without mercy or distinction. Ernie, the plaintiff, noted in the legal complaint that despite reasonable efforts to effectuate personal service upon the defendant, come out wherever you are, plaintiff has been unable to do so. Ernie Chambers graduated from Creighton University Law School and was first elected in 1970. He was term limited out in 2008. The law was changed just to get him out, but he waited it out for a term and won re-election in 2012. This spring, notably, he persuaded the state to drop the death penalty after never giving up seeking its abolition since 1970. Yes, there's pushback in Nebraska, but we were so thrilled with Ernie Chambers' victory over Old Testament eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth and life for a life barbarity that we asked him to please come and accept our Emperor Has No Clothes award. We're honored that he's agreed to be here today. This honoree teaches all of us the importance of being Ernie. Ernie, come meet your emperor. And then they applauded, and then I began to speak. Here are snippets of Senator Ernie Chambers' speech. I'm from a small town in Nebraska called Omaha, and I have small town ways, but I do not have a small brain or a small mind. Small minds think little thoughts, and you do not have to be limited in terms of your mental activities by the size or the backwardness of the place where you spend your life laboring. I was reared in a deeply religious fundamentalist household. The church was called the Church of God in Christ, and the people claimed to believe every word in the Bible the way it was written, but that was not what they believed at all. They had indicated that the only people who were right were in that church, and they did not mean the entire denomination. They meant just the people in that individual little building, and it was on 18th and Cumming Street. Before that, when I was very young, I went to the church that was on 26 between Erskine and this other street over. I do not care what people think or say about me because it makes no difference. I don't do things to please people. I treat people the way I want to be treated. I don't need a prayer book. I don't need a preacher. I don't need a psychologist, psychiatrist, or anybody to tell me what constitutes being ethical or righteous. I pay a lot of attention to words and language. Words have a life of their own. Words have meaning. Words have power. I believe in precision in the use of words, even though the ones reading them don't read as carefully as I will write them. But that's the price you pay. I'm just saying that as we go through life, we have to establish priorities and we determine which things mean the most to us. And to many people, words don't mean anything. When people criticize me, it has as much impact on me as the sweat of a gnat would have on the Rock of Gibraltar. People are fickle. If they're in a good mood, they say nice things. If they're in a bad mood, they say mean things. Why should I get angry if people are the way people are? If they say something today and say the opposite tomorrow, am I surprised? No. Why should I be surprised and upset when something behaves the way I know it's going to behave? You know why I will not accept the term atheist? I've never referred to myself as an atheist. And when other people hang that label on me, I tell them there are only two labels I accept: my name, which my mother gave me, and black. Black is the term that carries with it connotations: the lynchings, the bombings, the burnings, the castrations, the raping of our women and our little girls. And by the way, they did the same thing to Black men and boys. But as Black people, we are so accustomed to being defined and labeled by other people that I don't accept their labels. I don't need to, and you ought to think about it also. There is so much arrogance among white people, and white people are not even aware of it a lot of times. If people call you an atheist because you don't believe in a Christian God or Jewish God, are they atheists because they don't believe in the gods of the Romans, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Etruscans, the Vikings? So if you don't believe in their gods, you're atheist many times over. You're going to define yourself with a negative definition, not of what you are, but of which you are not. And I am supposed to accept what somebody says I am. If you allow yourself to be defined and labeled, then you have lost already. You don't have to accept what I say. What I say is based on what I've come to believe and what helps me make it through a very cruel, hostile world. But unlike a lot of people who accept those labels and flaunt them and are proud of them, labels don't play any part in my life. I've read the Bible, I call it the Bible, and as I told the people with whom I was eating today, that's the way I pronounce the word. And one of the senators who was there in the legislature, he was pretending to be religious. He said he was offended by the way I mispronounced the word. I asked why. He said, because that's not the way you pronounce it. I asked him how you pronounce it, and he said Bible. And I said, Bible. You say, you say tomato, I say tomato. Makes no difference, I said. However, when you read that book, you don't pay attention to what it says. You want to go back to Genesis and say, God said, whoever sheds blood, by man shall his blood be shed. I asked, if God meant what he said. Yes, said this supposed minister. Well, how do you know what God says? It's in the Bible, he said. And you say whatever's in the Bible is what God said, huh? He said, yes. Oh, and by the way, on that word, I'm going to spell a word very carefully and slowly, and I want you to pronounce it for me. B-I-B-L-E. He said Bible. Right. Now pronounce this for me. B-I-B-L-I-C-A-L. He said biblical. I said, there you go. You and I have come together. That's what your Bible says. Come, let us reason together. I'm not mad at you because you mispronounce it Bible. And you're going to be mad at me because I pronounce it correctly, Bibble? Excuse me. I pronounce it Bibble. It's what it is to each of us. And however way you pronounce it, it does not change it at all. But if you believe that it does, then it shows that the world for you is what's in your head and not what is out there actually in the real world. So you are seeing things as you are, not as those things are. And because of that, you misunderstand a lot. I will not label nor let anybody label me. And yet people do it anyway. So if they want to say I'm an atheist and they're cultured, then I quote Shakespeare as you like it. If they're rough and tumble, work hard for a living, buy fast food, then I'll tell them, I'll give you what Burger King would say, have it your way. You saying it doesn't make it so. But if it makes you happy, then as you think in your heart, let it be unto you, but it means nothing to me. Now, I was the only Black person there, except for a young Black woman who worked for that organization. And I'm not intimidated by the number of people, by the badges or titles that they wear. I don't care if it's Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Chief of Police, Captain or General in the Army. But don't get me wrong, when I was in the Army, I was such a good soldier. I'm going to bring a commendation that was written about me. When I was taking my advanced basic at Fort Ord, California, I had a commanding officer. He was a regular Army officer and he'd been through combat. And he wrote this commendation that I didn't know he was going to write it, but I'm not going to say it all. He started by saying what a good soldier, not senator, but Ernie Chambers is. When this young man came to us, and then he went on to elaborate. And if I remember, I'm going to bring it and read it to you. And you'll have to take my word for it that I'm actually reading what was actually written. But let me continue. And I'm scurrying and scampering right along. So my conclusion is based on the words of the greatest philosopher America ever produced, the greatest thinker ever produced by America, the most rational of rationalists ever produced by America, Popeye the Sailor Man. And they laughed. And here's what Popeye gave me. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. So call me an atheist, call me an agnostic, call me a non-believer, describe and try to define me in terms of what I am not, but I define myself in terms of what I am. And what I am is what I am, and that's all that I am. And that's the way, by the way, brothers and sisters, I've lived my life. Then they put some samples of little poems that I wrote. This is it's called Mortician's National Anthem. And it's, if you're going to sing it, it'd be sung to the tune of, these are a few of my favorite things. Now, I can't sing. They call me the burglar of music because I break into song. I might try to sing it. I was given a commission by a mortician to write a national anthem for those who do plant them, sung to the tune of my favorite things. Corpses, condolences, flowers, a coffin, black curtain hearse that they carry you off in, tombstones and epitaphs with verbal slings. These are a few of our favorite things. Remember, this is Morticians, their national anthem. Churches and eulogies, pallbearer mourners, weeping and wailing in all the church corners, choirs droning dirges that make grown men cry. These are the things that take place when folks die. Fine embalming keeps the corpse fresh, add some makeup too. Then a good service lends just the right touch, and all of this waits for you. Graves freshly dug with stone vaults placed inside them, Caskets are placed in those vaults that do hide them. Florists, morticians, grave diggers, and such. These are your servants who thank you so much. Row up on row rest the graveyard's residers. Someday all out here will all be insiders. Here is the truth which each person does know. We all shall help make that populace grow. When the last dirt tops the casket and the grave is filled, we shall not gather again in this way until someone else is chilled. Thank you. Thank you very much. Then here's a little thing. The old sailor's lament. Years and years, so many years, I sailed upon the vasty sea. When I reached the other side, there was nobody there excepting me. Now, this is a moral, moral. All who are religious should from wisdom's fountain drink. Waste not prayer when brains are there. Employ those brains and think. Now, I'm going to go into some things between that involve me and children, because they think I'm just a mean old man and I argue and go on all the time. And I got to scamper right along. This was dated May 2nd, 1980. The Ord School controversy could hurt the children, and that's what troubles Omaha Senator Ernie Chambers about the turmoil. After he spoke to Ord students Friday, Chambers told reporters that his law day talks at the schools were aimed at educating adults who weren't necessarily there. They had a lot of confusion and arguing going on, and a lot of it was surrounding whether or not I should even be allowed to speak to the children. Quote, if we talk about learning, I would say I hope the grown people in this town did some learning today rather than the children, Chambers said. Youth has a way of dying in the night and resurrecting itself in the morning, so I'm not worried about them, unquote. Chambers was dragged into the controversy when leaders of an effort to recall 2 Ord School board members attacked his scheduled appearance. School Superintendent Bill Gogan and 2 board members were attacked for allowing Chambers to speak. But those opponents did not confront Chambers during his day, although there were numerous opportunities. And I made it clear, here I am. Well, I was deeply disappointed at the gathering where I spoke when the invitation was given for people to ask questions, that these people would not go ahead and confront me and say the things that apparently they've had on their minds for so long, Chambers said. When I come all the way to their territory and they will not even show themselves, it's a disappointment to me, Chambers said. Although he was in the community of 2,500 for less than a day, Chambers said he observed enough to form some rather pessimistic opinions on its problems. Quote, the divisiveness that exists in this town, the bitterness that is readily observable, the type of publicity that has attended actions in this town has caused some wounds that possibly will never heal, Chambers said. It's a terrible thing that has happened here, but it doesn't have to remain that way. But knowing human nature, unless concerted effort is made to heal the community, you will have really a divided town, and I think eventually it will get down to the children. The 43-year-old father, I'm more than twice that age now almost. I'm 85. 2 times 43 is 86. I can multiply that little bit even though I was educated in Omaha public schools. The 43-year-old father of 4 seemed most to enjoy his talk with elementary school students, regaling them with tales from his own childhood and recounting his favorite stories. Chambers and the children developed an immediate rapport. At one point, Chambers was left speechless by a question from a little girl who asked him why, if he liked books so much, didn't he become a librarian? And when she asked, I just said, you got me. Chambers, usually quick with a response, laughed and paused before telling her that he liked books, but he wouldn't be good at that job. That was therapy for me, he said later. Those very little children did as much for me as perhaps I did for them. Chambers spent the day under the fishbowl eye of the news media, which followed him to each of his appearances, but he said he expected that treatment. If this was a cow, the media milked that cow for all she was worth, he added. Now, when I got there, there were cruisers, marked cars from the state patrol, the county sheriff, and the city police. When I went in the school building, I asked, "What's happening here?" And the principal smiled. He said, "You." I said, "They've got those cars here because they think I'm going to do something." He said, "You have to draw your own conclusion, but your coming is why all those police cars are out there." I never go to a school to fight. I go to a school to bring peace if anybody can do it, if there is trouble there, because this is to be a haven for children. They're to learn things about life, about living, how to treat other people, to have self-respect, believe that you are worth something and that you are somebody. That's what we as adults should be giving to our children, and they would make a better world than the one we're giving to them. Going to the next one, the Carney Hub. That was in 1980. This is going to go to 1997. I was in Carney. This was a small high school, and they wanted me to come speak. And a lot of senators and other big shots, or would-be big shots, won't go to a small school or a small anything. But whenever children ask me to do something, if I could do it, there I would be, and I would do what I could. Respect yourself, love yourself, and do what is right, was the message given by State Senator Ernie Chambers of Omaha Saturday to Axtell High School students. Learn as much as you can about as many things as you can, he said. Chambers was invited to be commencement speaker after the Axtell seniors had heard him speak at the Nebraska legislature. Chambers said he wanted to be part of the day because he likes to encourage youth. He told the parents and other adults that, quote, "Too many times we wage war against our young people because they don't act the way we want them to behave. Adults sometimes act if young people are the first ones to act that way when the adults have done the same thing." Chambers said, he said, "A lack of understanding creates the gap between generations." Chambers said he never lied to his four now grown children or frightened them. Quote, "If you frighten them, they will behave only as long as they are frightened," unquote. He said it's more important to teach them to be thinkers and do things because it's right. Brain power wins over muscle power every time. That's why the ox pulls a plow and the weak man is behind the plow moving the ox, if the man's got any intelligence. Make a point. Chambers said that when he was asked why he would go to Axtell, a town smaller than many graduating classes in the state, he told the questioners the fact that young people had asked him was reason enough. The controversial state senator joked that he has retracted his horns and wrapped up his tail, because that's the way I was portrayed, as the devil himself. Quote, "Some people see me as the devil," he said. "They only know what they've been told. I'm never disturbed by what others think. I do what I think is right. I know I'm not going to be here forever." Chambers said that because we don't know when death will surprise us, we should be doing what is right all the time so that we are doing what is right when we are surprised and must die. He told parents they cannot protect their children from the things of life, so the best they can do is tell their children about what's out there and prepare them to cope with it. Now, these students, after I had left, wrote a letter to me. "Dear Senator Chambers, the class of 1997 at Axtell High School wishes to express its most sincere thanks for your participation in our graduation ceremony. Your speech was filled with wisdom and insight that we will all remember for the rest of our lives. We couldn't have hoped for a better send-off. We also wish to thank you for making the trip to Axtell on such short notice. We had not originally planned to have a speaker at all at our graduation, mainly because we could think of no one that would be an inspiration to us and a representative to others around us, a representative of our class and what we stand for. However, our trip to the Capitol on Christensen's Day changed our minds. We listened to you speak, and we knew we had found our speaker. Brothers and sisters, friends, enemies, and neutrals, words have power. We listened to you speak, and we knew we had found our speaker. So many of the thoughts and ideas you expressed in your speeches were reflective of our class. You seemed to understand us, our values, our temptations, our qualities, and our shortcomings. We knew you were the one that would represent us to our community. I've got to come to their community and represent their children to the community where they live. That's the highest compliment they can pay me, but it's regrettable that it had to be that way. You would represent us to our community, and that you would send out a message that would touch each and every person in the building. You did. Thank you. I hope you found gratification in us, and we wish you the best of luck in the future. And then the class all signed the letter. If anybody could make me emotional, it would be the children. But I'm not going to get emotional just reading. I went to a third grade class at Lothrop School, and this is 2020. I mean, 2000. The teacher's name was Miss Myers, and she wanted me to come speak to her class. And after I spoke, she wrote me a letter and thanked me and said how it moved the kids. So I wrote this poem, and this is what I put. Dear class, I wrote this poem just for you. It deals with accepting people who may be different from us. Following the poem is my thought about a peacemaker. Differences. When the sun shines very hot, it makes the earth so dry, we can hardly find a spot that's cool, but yet we try. Trees grow tall with leaves of green as greenest jade. Trees like this we all have seen, and how we love their shade. Sitting underneath a tree and looking at the sky, many kinds of birds we see. Some perch and others fly. Some are red and some are blue, and some are gray or brown. Birds are many shades and hues, like people in our town. Although birds don't look the same, they seem to get along. Each may have a different name and sing a different song. Maybe if we study birds, they'll teach us what to do. Instead of saying hateful words, we'll sing and say, I love you. And then my final comment. A peacemaker is a mother who is kind, caring, and wise enough to teach brothers and sisters to live together in harmony in the same house. My favorite peacemaker is my mother. Sincerely, Ernie Chambers. Now, this, I'm scurrying right along, is very interesting because the ones that I spoke to were given the opportunity to choose anybody they wanted to. This occurred in Lincoln. Senator talks citizenship with Girl Scouts. All of them were white. The firebrand of the legislature cooled down to help them earn model citizen badges. This appeared in the Lincoln Journal-Star, May 18th, 2004. Ernie Chambers is the firebrand of the Nebraska legislature. After 34 years there, he is familiar with the most arcane legislative rules. He spends every working day, even when the legislature is not in session, in the Nebraska Capitol, dedicated to his job as defender of the downtrodden. See, these people know the kind of work that I did. These reporters knew, but there were things they couldn't get into the paper because the editors had a certain image they wanted to project of me. Continuing. But on Monday evening, I would stay down at the legislature in the evening, sometimes at night, to talk to certain groups. But on Monday evening, when he talked to the Junior Girl Scouts of Homestead Council's Troop 464 about citizenship, he handled them with so much aplomb and gentleness, it seemed as though he had taught elementary school for decades. Chambers spoke to the girls during their weekly meeting in the cafeteria of Belmont Elementary School to help them meet one of the requirements of the Model Citizen Badge. He explained why senators wrote laws. He talked about crime and punishment. He spoke about the importance of respecting the viewpoints of others. Quote, whenever people judge others unfairly, they treat them unfairly, Chambers said. And life is not fair, he said. As women, they will experience discrimination, he said. Quote, that does not mean we let it kick us in the rump, Chambers said. We just fight harder, unquote. He told the girls they should follow always their conscience, no matter what others say. Quote, sometimes it takes that one person who acts on what he or she believes to change the world, Chambers said. That's how I operate. When it came time for the 12 girls of Troop 464, see, I didn't need large crowds, ever. You could tell me there were two children or there was a child, and here I would come if it was at all possible. Continuing this article, when it came time for the 12 girls of Troop 464 to ask questions, he looked intently at each speaker with a gentle smile. He answered every question completely, no matter how odd an adult might think the question to be. Anna Brazier, mother of 10-year-old Scout Cassidy Brazier, said she had asked Chambers to speak to the girls. When asked which legislator they wanted to meet, Chambers seemed to be the only name that came up. The talk was supposed to last 15 minutes. It lasted 40. Quote, I see all children as if they were my own, and that makes it easy to talk to them, he said. Chambers said he considered it important to talk to children because they absorb the messages adults send them, but along with that comes a responsibility. Quote, we should be careful and watchful of whatever we tell them, he said. We should never mislead them. And now I'm getting down to the end. Over here, some with students of a little greater age acted. This was April 29th, 2000. Speech team at UNL, University of Nebraska, Lincoln, FETS, F-E-T-E-S, that means, gives an honor, Senator Chambers. During its 100th anniversary, the speech team at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, has chosen to honor one of the state's most talkative and controversial men, State Senator Ernie Chambers of Omaha. Chambers has been named Speaker of the Year by the UNL Forensics team. Quote, you have been a great proponent for academic achievement and understanding the value of public speaking, the speech team said in an April 20 letter to Chambers. As a speaker, legislator, and a member of the Nebraska community, you have stood up for change and made a difference in the lives of many others. You exemplify what it means to be a good speaker in and outside of the academic community, unquote. The award comes as no surprise to those who have been around Chambers, who is a magnet for young people. When school children come to the state capitol, they often ask to see Chambers, who may be the most recognizable state lawmaker. Chambers, who rarely goes to social functions, was to attend a banquet Friday to receive the award. The speech team at UNL has a long history of success. It was ranked 8th in the nation this year and 12th last year. And by the way, you all don't read the textbooks that your children have. I am featured in the 4th grade history book that is used in Nebraska public schools. So some of you all think, oh, he ain't about nothing. He ain't got nothing worthwhile to say. There are other people who don't see all the crushed rock, the muddy water. They see gold in them dar hills, and they accept it and make the most of it. That's why it's a poor car that won't toot its own horn. I dazzled the legislature, editors around the state. Reporters like to interview me because I was an easy story. They got good quotes, they got information, they got facts, and they got direct answers to their questions. This is from 1995. Singer-songwriter Laura Love says she has mixed feelings about her Omaha homecoming performance tonight at the Orpheum Theater. This was in 1995, remember. When I lived in Omaha, it was pretty hard, said Miss Love, 35. I lived on North 24th Street right after the race riots, and there was a lot of racial tension. Miss Love was born in Omaha in 1960. She is the daughter of Omaha and Preston Love, a jazz saxophonist who has played with the bands of such names as Johnny Otis and Count Basie. Quote, it will be nice to go back and see Omaha again and see how the city has grown. It will be nice to come back and see what we all have learned about living together and working together, unquote, Miss Love said from her home in Seattle. Miss Love, who later moved to Lincoln with her mother, Winfred Jones, said she mostly remembers the rough times she experienced as a child growing up in North Omaha. I come up in a lot of conversations. She said being light-skinned prompted taunts from other children in the neighborhood. I knew that if I could run from Sacred Heart, a Catholic school, to Ernie Chambers' barbershop, he would give me a place to hide, she said. He was so sweet to me. He would always be like, come on in here. And there were bullet holes in his walls from where he had been shot at during the riots. He'd give me a lollipop and stuff. I just thought the world of him, unquote. In his long career, Miss Love's father, Preston Sr., has played with the Temptations, the famed vocal quintet that headlines tonight's Orpheum show. And by the way, just by coincidence, they're coming to Nebraska soon. Not the originals, most of them are dead. He said he will be in Denver performing there. Miss Love, who will open the Temptations show with her four-piece band at 7:30 p.m., has gained notice as a musician for her blend of world beat, Celtic, they say Celtic, flavored folk and pop. In 1994, Billboard magazine selected Miss Love as one of the year's top 10 unsigned acts. Recently, Miss Love performed at the Newport Folk Festival in Newport, Rhode Island. Her latest island, quote, the Laura Love Collection, unquote, has stirred interest among major record labels in signing her to a recording contract. Miss Love said that although violence and racism cloud her memories of Omaha, she still calls the city home. Quote, I have many fond memories of Nebraska, she said. I love the lay of the land. I love the storms. I love the snow. I love the summers there. I loved everything about it, the simplicity of it, and I'm certainly excited to play with the Temptations. And here's the article about the performance. Temptations, Miss Love, wow crowd. Love conquered. The Temptations were loved, and the house rocked to a steady groove Tuesday night at the Orpheum Theater. In a stirringly bold Omaha homecoming performance, singer-songwriter Laura Love launched into her 40-minute opening set with an a cappella rendition of Amazing Grace. A cappella is a Latin term that means without accompaniment. A means without or no, and cappella, accompaniment. When you hear a cappella, that means there's going to be no musical accompaniment, just a little nugget along the way. Miss Love's rich, buttery vocals were pure sweetness as they poured into the audience of 1,991. In Omaha, that's a lot of people. When Miss Love, who also played bass, and her band turned on the music, the crowd began to clap and cheer. From there, the Omaha-born Miss Love, daughter of Omaha saxophone player Preston Love, took the audience down a road of Celtic-flavored folk pop and world beats, which she calls Afro-Celt. They spell C-E-L-T. Some people Celt. And it's something about the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtic basketball team, there's not a Celt among them. They're all Africans. But let me go on. Miss Love, now based in Seattle, showcased her yodeling talents during, quote, anyway, a tune, a bouncy, groovy tune that lent itself to Miss Love's fancy footwork. During aha me a riddle one day, Miss Love's braided hair flung in the air as she and her band, including skilled acoustic and National Steel guitar player Rod Cook, moved to the beat. The Temptations, who opened with the group's first hit, The Way You Do the Things You Do, got the crowd out of their seats and bopping before going into I Wish It Would Rain, a hit from 1968. Blue sky, sunshine, please go away. Girl found another and gone away. With her went my future. My life is filled with gloom. So day after day, I stay locked up in my room. I know to you, it might sound strange, but I wish it would rain. I wish that it would rain. That was quite a song. Then I don't remember it all, but all day long. Anyway, he wants to go outside, but he can't. But he wish it would rain because raindrops would hide the teardrops, and no one would ever know that he's crying, and on. I don't want to kill the song. Let me go on. Although the current group has only one original member of the Temptations' 1960 lineup, tenor Otis Williams, the 1995 version of Emperors of Soul can still put on a sweet show. Eddie Kendricks was one with the high voice. Dressed in matching black tuxedos, the Temptations, also featuring baritone Theo Peoples, tenor Ollie Woodson, and tenor Ron Tyson, offered stylish choreograph and smooth harmonies throughout the night. A #1 hit from 1971, Just My Imagination, Running Away with Me, had the Temps fans screaming with delight, mixing classic gospel, R&B, funk, and soul. The Temps flaunted their polished arrangements with skillfully melodic vocal chops. The Motown men, backed by a local bass section and their own five-piece band, slowed it down with their rendition of I Will Always Love You, a hit ballad for Whitney Houston in 1992. And poor Whitney, who sang that learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all, did not love herself enough to not get involved with that dope dealing fool, and she wound up dying in the bathtub, they think probably from suicide. So she gave good advice. Learning to love yourself is the greatest gift of all, but she didn't learn the lesson that she was teaching. And that reminds me of a Bible verse when a taunt was hailed to Jesus, physician, heal thyself. Anyway, while the Temps, oh, I read that. Oh, I'll just go ahead and read the whole paragraph. While the Temps no doubt can still evoke passion, it was during songs like I Will Always Love You. You know, I will always love you. Just showing you, I don't have singing chops, but I like pork chops. And Some Enchanted Evening, a Broadway number from South Pacific, that the vocal group strayed out of their range. Nevertheless, Tuesday's crowd couldn't get enough of the Temps, especially during the group's mega hit, My Girl. Now, this is the last item I'm going to read. This is from 2017. And I put together what I call an album. It's a picture book of all the photographs of little children that people have sent me, from babies on up to some people in college. And this was on the cover of it. This is a sort of photo album which illustrates that, quote, in my universe, children are the center. Grown-ups may peek in, but may not enter. Then this was an article in the Lincoln Journal-Star, April 16th of 2013. Chambers is legislative rock star. The Omaha senator came down the stairs, headed for his office during the lunch recess, and ran headlong into a clump of young admirers. It quickly turned into a squealing mob scene of elementary school children from St. Wenceslaus School in West Omaha, all surrounding Senator Chambers, posing for pictures with him, uniformed Catholic young ones chanting his name, Ernie, Ernie, Ernie. One boy reportedly endorsed him for Pope. Not sure what touched off the aggregate adoration, but who, we ask, needs a rock star when you have the popular politician from North O, who sometimes is not popular in North O, huh? There are people who don't know me, will never know me, and they don't like me. And maybe if they knew me, they would hate me. But what other people think does not determine what I am, nor does it determine what I do. And I wish people would understand, but if the Jesus character in the Bible was not understood, why should I, a mere mortal, expect to be understood? And here's a verse that I put on the cover of this, and I could quote it, but I'm going to read it. Matthew, the 18th chapter, the 6th verse. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it would be better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. And to that I say, amen, brother. And quote the canary who heard that the door to his cage was ajar, I'm out of here.
Thank you for watching The Ernie Chambers Show. If you'd like to make suggestions, email us at ewcfacts@gmail.com. That's ewcfacts@gmail.com. This has been an EWC Communication production.